the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose, where I strategize with business owners on how to grow and scale their businesses to hit their income goals. This is episode 323 of the Influencer Entrepreneurs Podcast with Jenny Melrose. Today, we're going to be jumping into anxiety and perfectionism in your business with Robyn Graham. Robyn was on the podcast back a couple years. You're going to hear me welcome her and then welcome her back because I got a little confused. But I can tell you this, I am divulging a lot of information, I feel like, over the last couple weeks where I have shared with guests things that I have been dealing with as a mom, as a business owner, and how I have been able to overcome and still looking for the strategies to overcome. So Robyn is here sharing that. I want to make sure that if you don't grab her workbook that goes along with this, you'll hear me talk about it. Just send me a DM on Instagram at Jenny_Melrose, and I will make sure to send that workbook directly to you. She is going to not only share information that is going to benefit you, but also potentially your children if they are struggling with anxiety. All right, you guys, let's dive in. Hi, Robyn. How are you? Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Jenny, how are you? I am so grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
Of course. And I realized I said, welcome to the podcast. I should be saying welcome back to the podcast because we had you on a while ago, a couple years ago, to talk about your brand identity. So I'm excited to really have this conversation about anxiety and perfectionism because I don't think it's something that we talk enough about and bring to light. But before we actually do that, will you introduce yourself and your business to my audience?
Sure, I'd love to. I am a personal brand strategist and a business and mindset coach. I just recently had the honor of getting my master certification for Christian life coaching. So that's super exciting to add to my business coaching. But I also am the host of the Robyn Graham Show, as well as the author of You, Me, and Anxiety, Take Action Over Anxiety to Enjoy Being You. And I work with my clients to help them build a solid foundation for long-term brand and business success. And I do that with teaching them all of the nitty-gritty of brand marketing strategies and how to do your marketing and build your business without social media.
Which I love. And I'm sure my audience is going, ooh, I like her already. Let's talk more about this. So I feel like my audience has a lot of people that would define themselves as type A. There's a lot of teachers that I feel like are very consistent and push themselves to do the best that they possibly can and probably would define themselves as perfectionists. Can you define perfectionism for us? How would you define it?
I would define perfectionism, and let me tell you, I've been there, but perfectionism is that state of mind where you don't take action unless you know everything is going to work out just right. All the groundwork has been laid because you're afraid to make a mistake. And so you're making sure that everything is perfect, air quotes, before you take action to actually do something. So there's a lot that goes into perfectionism, including fear, procrastination, and all of those other things that ultimately hold you back because you're afraid to let anything out into the world unless everyone else is going to think, it is perfect. And you yourself are, I guess, secure in the fact that nothing bad's going to happen because you made sure it was perfect.
So you talked about that fear. You mentioned that it comes from an inherent sense of fear. Where is that coming from normally, do you find?
You know, Jenny, it comes from, I think, a lot of different places. I think when we are growing up, we have a lot of environmental factors that influence how our mind works and how our brain thinks. And if we have had any circumstances where maybe we were young and we made a mistake and someone called us out on that and we were embarrassed or we felt shame over that. And, you know, anxiety can trigger perfectionism. Anxiety can trigger fear. And so you really can't pinpoint exactly where it's coming from. But a lot of times we who have perfectionism have been in environments where it was expected of us, or we thought it was expected of us in order to please other people, or even to please ourselves.
That definitely makes sense. So you said that anxiety causes perfectionism. Why? Why does anxiety add to that?
So A couple of things. One, I want to make sure people know, like, you can have perfectionism. You can be a perfectionist without having anxiety. And that's one of those things that when you're a type A person, you are so driven and you want to achieve everything you can possibly achieve. And that drives you toward that level of perfectionism because you want to make sure that you're taking all the right steps and doing them in the right order and doing them in the right ways to get to where you want to go. But with anxiety, what happens is we get like a hiccup in our brain. And on the cover of my book, I have a Ferris wheel, and I like to use this analogy. And when you have anxious, negative thoughts coming into your brain, if you think of a Ferris wheel, the Ferris wheel will go fast, and that's really fun and exciting, but it slows down to let people off, and then it slows down to let people on. With anxiety, our brain gets going in this negative cycle, and it doesn't stop to let those negative thoughts out and the positive thoughts in. So when you are a person with anxiety, there's so much fear that you're going to do something wrong. You're going to hurt someone. Someone's going to hurt you. Your brain is constantly thinking what if thoughts. And so if you're thinking what if thoughts around any type of action that you have to take, any goal that you want to accomplish, any dream that you have, you're going to hold yourself back because you want to make sure that everything is perfect because you're so afraid of making mistakes.
Yes, that makes so much sense. And I love the analogy to the Ferris wheel because it's that spiraling that we often will see. I've had clients that will say, I'm in a spiral today, and it's hard to get out of it. So how can we as business owners actually improve our perfectionism? Is that possible? What are some tactics?
It's absolutely possible. Here's the thing. Our thoughts will produce our results. So if you can catch your thoughts, those negative, anxious, fearful thoughts, those thoughts of shame, those thoughts of embarrassment or fear that are holding you back in that space of negativity or from doing the thing, if you can catch those thoughts and challenge them, you're going to start to be able to change them and have more control over them. And ultimately, that's going to give you more confidence to put one foot in front of the other, to take one step at a time to move forward. The key is catching the thoughts. Instead of letting them run wild in your mind, catch those thoughts and then challenge them. Like if I could say, well, would Jenny say the same thing about me that I'm thinking about me? Would Jenny take action or would Jenny wait for this to be perfect? Think of someone that you know and love, that you truly respect, and think about how they think of this situation. Ask yourself, could my thoughts be proven in a court of law? Is somebody really going to think that I'm a failure if I put this out into the world and it's not perfect? And I think for entrepreneurs, especially before we put something out into the world, like an online course or a coaching program or even a lead magnet, you want to make sure that it's completely polished and perfect. But the reality is our people that we're meant to work with want to meet us where we are. They want us to meet them where they are. And if we are too perfect and too polished, we may intimidate them. We may cause them to be afraid of us and not want to work with us because they feel so inadequate compared to us. So those are just a few things to start transitioning those thoughts that are in your brain to, you know what, it's better to take action than to not take any action at all. And if you realize and recognize that your thoughts are going to produce your results. And when I talk about that, Brooke Costell actually came up with this model where you have a situation or a circumstance, and that is neutral. But then you have your thoughts around that, and your thoughts could be negative or positive. But if your thoughts are negative, that's going to trigger emotions or feelings that are negative. When you're stuck in an area of negative emotions and feelings, then what's going to happen? You're going to feel icky and you're not going to take action, or you're going to take negative action. So say you are trying to become healthier or you're trying to lose weight. Well, if you're sitting in that place of, well, I don't feel good. I'm a failure. I'm never going to achieve this. So-and-so so much prettier than I am. And, I don't feel worthy. And I'll never be able to fit into that dress. And you're sitting there with all these thoughts that are creating those negative emotions. What's going to happen? You're going to grab the donut. You're going to grab the Diet Coke. You're not going to exercise. You're going to sit on the couch. So you have to think of the reality that if you don't catch and change those thoughts, your results are going to be null and void. Whereas you flip that idea, the concept of, you have a situation and all of a sudden you're thinking positive thoughts, you're excited, those emotions are coming in, you feel confident, and you can use a sales call as an example of this when you're trying to work with a new client or convert a new client. And, if you go into that sales call thinking, oh gosh, they're not going to have enough money to pay me, or, oh goodness, they're probably like somebody else better than me. And, all these thoughts, they're going to give you a lack of confidence. That's how you're going to feel. And you're going to feel overwhelmed and unworthy and like they're not your person, when the reality is they're coming to you because they already want to hire you. You flip that conversation in your mind, you're more likely to get the result you want, to sign that new client.
Yes. And it's about, we often, I think, see signs that we interpret based on how we're thinking, negative or positive, to actually affirm what we're feeling. Right? It's that whole idea of law of attraction. Like a lot of people will read The Secret, and there's actually, I watched it Monday when we were all homesick. There's a new show, Netflix, I think it was on, Katie Holmes was in it. And it talks about, it's called The Secret, and it's based on that, the story, but it actually tells like a real like rom-com kind of story. It was such a cute movie, but it was this idea that you continue to see negative things when you're in that kind of negative feeling. And if you actually flip the script and looked for the positive and thought that you could, these are things that can happen, it's that law of attraction that pulls it to you and actually can make it happen. And I think it's really difficult for people to look at it that way because it feels like it's woo-woo, right? Oh, it's that whole mindset idea that if you can attract whatever you want.
And honestly, I'm not big into manifestation at all, but we can actually, biblically, we know how our brain is supposed to work. We know that our brain is supposed to be loving and kind, not only to others, but to ourselves. And so if we can accept the fact that our brain is this incredible, just almost mystical, but miraculous thing that it can actually change. We can change how we feel. We can change physically. And with anxiety, a lot of times you have physical symptoms that are negative. So if you're sitting in that place of negative thoughts and you are, letting your thoughts control your emotions negatively, you're physically not going to feel well either. And that's just how the mind-body connection is. And it's amazing how intricate it is, but how that energy can come off and influence the people around us. You think about it, if you're having a conversation with someone who, maybe you have a friend or a relative who's just always negative, and you just feel heavy every time you're around them. And you end up, you started out the day just amazing. This is going to be a great day. Yay. Woohoo. I'm ready to go. And then you have a conversation with that person and you just feel heavy and down. That negative energy is coming from the negative thoughts that they have swirling around in their mind that they're not willing to work on and change. So it's really important to take those steps and I call that my 5 C's journaling method. The key is to get those negative thoughts out of your head and write them on paper. When you see those negative thoughts on paper and then you challenge them on paper, you're more likely to trigger the neural pathways in your brain to change them. And we know that journaling actually is equivalent to meditation. So if you're not a person that likes to meditate, get your pen and paper and start journaling because it does wonders for your mind.
Okay. So this is very interesting that this is the direction that you went, because I recently have had a guest on that she also said, take that time to be quiet. And I looked at her and I said, yeah, that doesn't happen. I have ping pong thoughts. I don't know how to deal with it. And she asked me a question. She's like, well, what are those thoughts? Why are you having all those thoughts that you can't slow it down? Had me bawling in the middle of a podcast interview that all of my listeners have now since listened to because it's prior to this one. And if you're listening to this, it's the interview with Douglas Hunt. But it was an episode. It was so poignant for me because she said, you're hiding something by saying that you can't get quiet. And I ordinarily would have said to you, I can't journal. I hate journaling. It doesn't work for me, but it's because I don't want to actually approach it. So walk me through, you said 5 C's is what you had said for your journaling. What does that consist of? Like, what am I thinking about? What am I writing about? Because I think that that's the problem that I have. I don't want to write Dear Diary. That just doesn't work for me. I can't just put my thoughts out and say, today I just feel ridiculous. So what does it look like?
So here's what it looks like for me. And I think I'm a pretty good example just because I'm an average person. I am not some guru and I'm not into this for promotion. But for me, every single morning, I can get up out of bed and how do I feel? I really kind of look at the day ahead and how do I feel? Any of those negative thoughts that are floating around in my head, I get them on paper and I will run through those thoughts and see, okay, is this rational? Can this be proven in a court of law? Is this going to serve me today? Is this going to serve my clients today? Is this going to serve my family today? The answer to any of those questions is no. Then I'm going to change those thoughts and I'm going to write down the negative thought to the positive thought side by side so I can actually see my brain shift. When you shift to that positive thought on paper, your body, everything's going to kind of release the negative thought. And it sounds crazy. And let me just tell you something. It doesn't happen overnight. This is a practice that you have to develop. But if you get all those negative thoughts out of your head in the morning, it's like a brain dump, right? And then change them to the positive, you're going to be able to have more control over your thoughts throughout the day. When you have more control over your thoughts, you're going to be more confident in every single thing that you need to do the rest of the day. Maybe it is a discovery call or a sales call. Maybe it's actually hitting publish on a blog post or something else big that you have to do. Maybe it's a speaking engagement. But the more you get rid of those negative thoughts and you put the positive thoughts down on paper, the more your brain's going to believe it. Now, my journaling practice has kind of transformed over the years. And, it used to be just writing. But now I actually, because our thoughts are not linear and neither should your journaling be, it can be, and it can be very effective that way. But I actually will, and this may be for anybody who's a creative, especially, but really anyone. And it's a great way to tap into your creativity as well. If you have that negative thought and you put it in the center of a piece of paper, I just use like a sketch pad or a drawing pad and I use glitter markers because it's fun, but I'll put a bubble around that negative thought. And then off of that bubble, I'll do like a flow chart of all the positive thoughts that I can have around that negative thought to change it.
Okay.
And so the more you start to do these exercises, the more you'll start to recognize when those negative thoughts are coming in. And this is going to sound a little like religious cliche, but the reality is, God created our mind to be positive. We're created in the image of Jesus, right? Well, Satan is here prowling about. And of course, any of those negative thoughts that he can get us to believe, he's going to be thrilled. So the more we catch those thoughts, the more we can silence that, get him out of our head and focus on the positive for the rest of our day.
Yes. Okay. That makes
I'm not sure, that may sound different, but I think that for me, that really helps me because when those negative thoughts come in, I can say, get the heck out, I'm not doing this today. I'm going to be positive.
Yes. So before we got on, you asked me, how are your girls? And I said to you that we are struggling with my youngest with some anxiety. And it's very much this. It's the negative talk. Everything is the end of the world. And you said physical before. You said that sometimes they have physical symptoms. She gets a stomach ache every single morning before she gets dropped off to school. And I think we've been working on different strategies. And part of the hard part for me is you also said, I swear, it's like all these little pieces get put together. I swear to God. You said in the beginning how oftentimes you have family that will be negative, that are just that was a very big trigger. And I worked very hard on myself to be more of a positive person. So now I have this little itty bitty that every time she gets off the bus and I say, how was your day? And she spews all of the negative stuff at me right away. And it feels like I'm back as a kid in my own house with my parents of hearing those negative thoughts. So it triggers me and I'm kind of like, I don't know how to fix this because I'm triggered as it is. So And I know I'm totally going in depth here with you and with my audience, but I think it's good to be honest about this because we don't talk about these things, not only for ourselves, but also for our family. I know I have clients whose kids are really having a tough time right now because of the pandemic and what it has done to our kids. So my point, or the question that I have, is how do I reframe that? What is something, I love the idea of the bubbles and even for her to be able to use like glitter markers coming off of that. But what is something, and she's 9, so she can write and do those things. So it's something that you would recommend, because I know in your book, you have 2 versions. You have one for the adult, for the parent, and you have one for the teenager. She's not quite a teenager, even though she acts like one. So I'm just curious, what would you recommend?
So a couple of things that come to my mind. One is that the number one key, and I stress this in my book, is to never, ever say to your child or to anyone who may be struggling with anxiety is get over it. Because the reality is, if you're having this hiccup in your brain, you can't just get over it. It is a team effort. So kudos to you that you're recognizing this in your daughter at the age of 9 and you're taking action to help her, because action is the key. So for her, when she gets off the bus and she's spewing these negative thoughts, how can you instead say, maybe she's saying, well, so-and-so looked at me weird today. How can you say to her, or think about what you can say to her to, well, do you think maybe she was looking at how pretty you are? Or do you think maybe she liked your outfit and was wondering where you got it? Things like that. If she's thinking, oh my gosh, my teacher was so mean to me today. Well, rephrase that. Maybe she wasn't mean to you. Maybe she was having a bad day herself. Or maybe another child actually aggravated her, and so she got crabby. Or maybe she has something going on at home. But I think it's important to help kids realize that, 99% of the time, people aren't thinking about us. And my daughter has been that, well, I don't want people to notice me, or I don't want people to look at me, or I don't want people to see me. And it's like, first of all, most people aren't going to even pay one bit of attention to you. They're going to be paying attention to their own lives, their own selves, their own issues, their own challenges, whatever, because every single person out there has something going on. And even for kids, I think they see other kids, and social media has really resulted in this, that they see everything looking so green. The pasture over there is beautiful and it's green and the grass is almost sparkly, when the reality is every single family has something going on. Nothing is perfect. And so to help kids realize even at a young age, but I think those teen years are especially critical, where they can realize that, you know what, I'm me and I'm okay with being me. And it's hard. It's hard to accept who we are, but the earlier they can do that, the easier life's going to be later. And the other thing is adhering to values. I'm a big, big believer. I think as entrepreneurs, your entrepreneurial journey is going to be so much easier if you're adhering to your values. And the same for kids. If you grow up in a home where, drugs, alcohol, sex, all those things are frowned upon, then those are values that have been instilled in you. Being kind is a value. Accepting others is a value. All those things, faith is a value. When you adhere to your values, you're going to make decisions that you can be confident about instead of going down that tunnel of doubt or shame or guilt. And so if you can instill those kind of things in her, not knowing which negative thoughts she's actually coming off the bus and spewing out at you, it's hard for me to say, but those are a few things that I think, the teacher is mean, or the kids were mean, or I hate my outfit, or I'm fatter than somebody else, or I was slow in PE today. All those things, there's always a flip side to that. And it really becomes almost an exercise in creating a new habit for yourself, to be able to head those statements off. Because sometimes I get it. It's like, oh my gosh, another negative spiral. Like, can we please just get over this? But doing that because we're frustrated doesn't help.
Yes. And I know that. And I do know that because her anxiety comes from my anxiety that I had as a kid. And I remember the stomach aches, but it was also, you didn't talk about it. Nothing was reframed. And you did just get over it then. That was absolutely just the way we were forced and pushed out. And I think I am the way I am as far as being able to run my own business and some of the crazy things, speaking in front of people and whatever else, because I was pushed at times.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that she's not me. She has a very different personality than I do, which also makes it hard because she's my husband's personality
Mm-hmm.
and not understanding where he doesn't quite have the same negativity that she does. And how do we flip this and reframe it? But that was excellent because the exact example you gave of giving me a look or giggling at me, that is definitely something she's come off and said, coming out of dance, coming out off the bus, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. So that's truly, truly helpful. So now,
the other thing is, and I think this is important. Sorry, I interrupted you, but I think this is important for everyone, kids, adults, everyone. But and I've always said this to my kids too. If somebody's making fun of you, it's not you that's the problem. They have something going on in their life that is making them sad or unhappy, or maybe they themselves have anxiety, and this is their way of making themselves feel better. Maybe they're jealous of you. And it's not giving your child permission to call them out on it per se, but it's giving your child permission to recognize that it's not them, it's the other kid. And anyone who's been bullied can understand that. And it's just a harsh reality that most of the time I was bullied extensively in elementary school. My elementary school was a small parochial school. So it was kindergarten through 8th grade. And from probably 2nd grade to 8th grade, there was one girl, and it was awful, just awful. And, I would cry. I didn't want to go to school because of it, but her home life was awful. And I look back at her life and the trajectory it took because of that. And it's very, very sad. Of course, then all I wanted to do was be her friend, and I would have done anything to be her friend, but she wasn't healthy. And if someone else isn't healthy, they're not going to be able to be kind and loving and generous to you. And back, Jenny, before we go, I just want to say this. When you talk about journaling, one way that you can start when it's really seems hard for you is to do a gratitude journal first. And when I do this at the end of the day, and this is actually how I got my start. I started this I couldn't even tell you how many years ago, but every night before I'd go to bed, I'd write down 3 things I was grateful for. Some nights I'm so tired. It's like, oh gosh, I don't even know what happened today. It was such a crazy day. What am I even thankful for? You know what? I'm thankful for the pen in my hand. Some days I'm thankful for a sharpened pencil, whatever, but there's always, always, always something to be grateful for. And maybe for you, it's starting, okay, I don't know your daughter's name, but maybe she gets off of the bus and she's got a smile on her face today instead of saying something negative. Or maybe it's that, hey, I was quick-witted. I cut her off on that negative thought and changed it to a positive. Little things like that. If you start every single day, because when you have anxiety, if you can start seeing so many things as blessings, those obstacles as opportunities versus things that are going to hold you back, then you'll be able to start switching those thoughts, transferring those thoughts to more positive as well.
So good. No, that's truly, truly so helpful and gives me ideas as far as how to help her as well as how to help myself as with clients and just in general to continue to put out the positive in life and be grateful for what we do have. I think is so important. So tell me more about your freebie that you offer. We're going to make sure that we link to you in the show notes. As far as when it comes to anxiety and things, do you have something that can kind of help people, guide people through?
Yeah, sure. So as part of the book, I created a journal because in the book, there are exercises throughout the book. And so I created a journal that people could use to do the exercises and then continue to do the exercises going forward. And so I have a mini version of that, just a little ebook of the journal that people can download. So it can get them started on the 5 C's journaling method, as well as take a look at really help them identify okay, what are the triggers? So for example, you're say you wake up or your child wakes up one morning and they have a stomach ache, and then this continues for a period of time. You take them to the doctor finds absolutely nothing wrong with them. And what on earth is going on? Oh, you know what? These stomach aches are occurring every single time we have XYZ. and you can start correlating the trigger to the symptom. And then you can start addressing those triggers and the thoughts around those triggers. So there's exercises like that in the book and then in the journal. So if they download the free ebook, they'll be able to get a really good feel of what it's like to start that journaling process and then go from, feeling these specific feelings or physical things, and then identify those triggers as well.
Excellent. So we're going to link to that in the show notes. And where can people find your book?
You can find my book by going to go to youmeandanxiety.com. That's the best place.
Okay.
Yeah, because it'll take you right to Amazon as well. So you can buy the book on Amazon or through the website, which is youmeandanxiety.com.
Perfect. And where else is the best place to connect with you? You also have a podcast.
I do. It's the Robyn Graham Show, and I love it. We always have great guests, including you. You were on the guest list as well. But the podcast is great, the Robyn Graham Show, or join my email list. I send out, for anyone who's struggling a little bit, every Monday I send out journaling prompts. And so I base that on who knows what. Maybe it was during the weekend I was making a chocolate cake and I used powdered sugar instead of flour. But that will lead to a journaling prompt. So people seem to like it and appreciate it. And then, later in the week, I'll do a business tip email, but I don't spam. So that's really just go to my website and you can access that subscription link there.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Robyn, for taking the time to speak with me and my audience. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. I'm so grateful to be here. And if anybody has any questions too, I welcome anyone to email me, Jenny. My email is robyn@therobyngraham.com. I'm happy to help anyone if they need help.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Well, there you have it. If you haven't already grabbed her workbook, make sure that you do. Also, make sure that you go and grab her book. If you or you have children that are potentially struggling with anxiety, her book is going to be so helpful. I grabbed the teen version so that I could be able to kind of see how she is walking through it with them, to be able to have strategies and coping mechanisms kind of put into place. I loved her analogy of the Ferris wheel of those of those anxiety-filled thoughts that just continue to spiral and go around and around and around, and how we can potentially try to stop those as a business owner. So if you haven't already left a rating and review, I would so appreciate it if you took the time to do so. And I will see you all next time.